second reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2. Listen to this familiar story of the wise men seeking the Christ child. Listen to what the Spirit has to say to the church gathering today. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed the star at his rising and come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened. All Jerusalem with him. Calling together all the chief priests and scribes and the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called to the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and gave him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another way. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We join in prayer. O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be found pleasing and acceptable in your sight, O Lord, for you are all God. Amen. Amen. Well, I remember the first time I read this story as an adult when I was in undergraduate school in my New Testament class. And the professor told us that Jesus was probably of the age of around 2, give or take, when the Magi showed up. And for the first time in my life, I put 2 and 2 together, and I realized it means they're not at the stable. I've been lied to my whole life. So, this morning, if you have a manger scene and it has Magi, remove them from it. They do not belong there. We put them there because, of course, we tell the whole story of Christmas. The Magi are a strange part of this story. They seemingly don't fit, right? They don't belong in the manger, Bethlehem, with the shepherds, because they weren't there, but also because they just are a little bit odd. Why in the world are these wise men, these Magi, coming from the east, wherever that may be, to give homage, to pay respect, to bow down to this king of the Jews? It's a strange story. And one that I think most folks don't really like. the story of light, of revelation, of epiphany, or understanding. The prophet Isaiah tells us, "Arise, shine, for light has come. The glory of the Lord has risen upon you." Isaiah begins not with an invitation, but a declaration. The light has come. It's already happened. Before we move, before we decide, before we respond, God's light shines in the sky. God's light is already here. Epiphany, this season, the church lingers with that truth. Christmas tells us that Christ has come. Epiphany tells us that Christ is revealed, not just to a few, Mary, Joseph, and some shepherds, not just to those whom the angels declare, but to the whole world. Light spills out beyond its expected borders. Light draws people near who never imagined it was meant for them. Isaiah imagines that moment with poetry and promise. Darkness covers the earth. Thick darkness covers the people, but the Lord rises upon you. Nations come to your light. Kings to the brightness of your dawn. Gold and frankincense arise. Joy and praise spill out. And what was once hidden is seen and understood. The Gospel of Matthew tells us of that same journey. Wise ones, magi, from the east. We're not exactly sure who they are. Probably some kind of astrologers, because clearly they were paying attention to the sky. And they noticed a light. One single star that does not belong in the sky. And somehow it calls them. These outsiders, these seekers from beyond the boundaries of Israel's faith and its story, they see something new. It interrupts their ordinary work, their ordinary lives, and they decide to follow it. And that is the story of Christianity. That God interrupts our reality in a baby named Jesus, who's now a toddler. And every time I read this story in Matthew chapter 2, it strikes me how little they know. They don't know where they're going. They don't know how long the journey will take. They don't know what kind of king they're going to find. And they don't know how much it will cost them to get there. They only know a light has appeared, and they cannot ignore it. Epiphany. It begins there, with noticing, with paying attention to the light that breaks into the darkness of ordinary days. It's a new year, and I would imagine that many of you have been working, or perhaps will, or perhaps you ignored altogether your resolutions, as we call them, right? Your goals for the coming year. Perhaps you reflected on how you did in the previous year and set resolutely, I'm going to do these things in the new year. Epiphanies, right? Of what worked, what didn't work. But here's the thing about Epiphany. prove just how powerful they are. He tries to extinguish the light rather than be changed and transformed by it. You keep reading the story, you know what happens. The church celebrates the Feast of the Innocents, it's called, later this week, to remember all the children between the ages of 2 and birth that will be killed by a king so desperate to remain in power that he will kill babies. We like to keep Herod safely in the past. We often don't tell that story. In fact, that story does not show up in the lectionary. I know you will all keep track of what stories in the Bible are in the lectionary, but us pastors do it. That's one of the stories that does not show up. Do you want to know why? Any guesses as to why that story does not show up in the lectionary? Because it's not a very good story, right? We like to keep Herod in the past. But Epiphany doesn't let us do that because if we are honest, there are parts of us that react the same way when the light of Christ exposes us. Our own sin, our own want, the ways in which we cling to our privilege, our control, our comfort, we become threatened. The gospel always calls us to loosen our grip, to live differently, to love more deeply, more generously. And the truth is, often our first instinct is not joy, but fear. Then there are the religious leaders who hear this news. They know the scriptures. They've read Isaiah chapter 60. They know about this child that is to come. They can quote the prophecy. They even point the Magi in the right direction. Did you pick up on that? The reason the Magi know where to go is because of the religious leaders that are attending King Herod. They stay exactly where they are. They don't follow the Magi to the house. They remain. They don't move. They are unchanged. It does not disrupt their routine or their priority in any way. Life continues as usual. I'm sure the debrief after the meeting was, wow, that was interesting. I hope they found what they're looking for. And if I'm honest, this is the most unsettling response to this light that shines. Because it's very familiar, is it not? It's possible to know the language of faith, to be close even to holy things, and remain completely untouched and unchanged by the living God who comes, the child in the manger. To hear our God and never actually draw near to him. And then, of course, there are the Magi. They keep going. Their journey is long and costly. It pulls them away from their home, certainly from the lives they knew. Most scholars believe that this was a multi-year journey, not a day, not 2 days, but many days, years, unsafe, sleeping in who knows where, traveling through a variety of contexts, facing danger and confusion and even political intrigue with this meeting of Herod. They walk is Epiphany. Most of us know what it's like to keep going without clarity. We do it all of the time. To ask the big questions of life, our families, our congregation here, our future, and to not have answers. Because the truth of life is that we never have the answers we want. Amen? We don't know where we're going. We don't know what's up ahead. We don't know what the test result will say. And even when we get it back, we're not really sure what it means. Or we're waiting for that next thing. And all we want is to have nice, clean answers. Epiphany, it clears everything up. To know exactly where we're going and where we're headed. But more often than not, life is simply saying, I don't know. And the story of the Magi reminds us that that's what faith is. It's not knowing the destination. It's trusting the light is enough to guide you there. They didn't know where Bethlehem was when they left home. They only saw a star. And so they followed. And that is enough. Isaiah's promise and Matthew's story, they meet here. The light does not remove the darkness all at once. It shines in the darkness. It gives direction. It gives hope. It gives illumination to keep moving forward. When the Magi finally arrive to meet this king of the Jews, it's not a palace. They do not find power as the world finds it. This baby doesn't have nurses caring for it day upon day, but rather Mary and Joseph, a child, vulnerable, ordinary, small, and they rejoice with exceeding joy. They fall down, they worship, and they open their ears. This is what happens when we draw near to the light. When we follow the light, we are changed. Not coerced, not forced, but transformed. And what we cling so desperately to begins to loosen, and what we protect begins to open, and what we carry becomes a gift. That is Epiphany. The gift. Matthew tells us one more important thing about the story of the Magi. After they encounter the light of Christ, the Magi go home by another road. Now, we could interpret that to say, well, they know that Herod is doing Herod's thing, so they probably shouldn't go. But I like to believe it's because they can't go back the same way they came. Because they're not the same anymore. That's Epiphany. When you encounter the light of Christ, you do not walk away unchanged. And so the same road, the same path, the same way, you can't walk it anymore because you're not the same. Isaiah ends where Matthew points us. The light is not meant to be hoarded. It draws nations, it gathers people, it reshapes communities, it turns fear into joy and scarcity into abundance. That's the invitation. That's the declaration. That's Epiphany. We're all invited to draw near to the light. Not because we have everything figured out. Not Utah last week hiking. Perhaps you had the privilege of hiking in Arches or Canyonlands. Those trails, they're marked, but not well. And you find yourself on a slab of rock, looking for a pile of rocks called a cairn, and hoping that some 7-year-old niece or nephew hasn't built one in the wrong place. So I apologize to any of you who find yourself on the Slick Rock Trail, some Canyonlands. There are some that are not helpful. But it's like following the light. It's not straight. It's winding. And even though you might veer off to the right or to the left, if you keep your eyes open, you'll find that stack of rocks that leads you back again, again, again. So draw near to the light that shines in Christ. And as you do, you will find a community that goes with you, and a God who loves you. And through the quiet pull toward a different way of being, one that is filled with joy and compassion, forgiveness, and courage, and love. Epiphany does not promise certainty. It promises presence. It promises us that even now,